Hello there, Internet. Maokai here, and I got another Legends of Runeterra video for you guys today. And today we are going to be talking about Maokai. This is not an actual live reaction, as I had a bit of an issue with my recording, so I kind of messed it up. So I have seen this video prior, just letting you guys know. But I've been able to collect my thoughts for like the past few minutes, and I can talk a little bit about this very, very interesting champion that I feel is going to lead up to some very, very cool decks. But also, I'm not really sure. Okay, let me explain what I'm talking about as we look over this, okay?
I refuse to wilt.
Refuse to wilt. So Maokai, as you guys can see here, is a 4-mana 1/4, which is quite understated. Just so you guys understand, 1/4 is the base stat line for a 2-drop. A total of 5 stats. The good old Vanguard Lookout has the stat line, and even the Boom Crew Rookie has a stat line with a positive effect as well, right? So paying 4 mana for 1/4 in stats, not very good, but as you guys can see in his ability, we have ourselves an engine, aka a card that can generate endless value as he sticks on the board. The first time you play another ally, each round, toss 2 and summon a sapling. So, what does toss mean and what is a sapling? Well, we're about to see. As we see the keyword toss. Toss is self-milling, but from the bottom of your deck. Obliterate X non-champion card, so you can never actually toss a champion, which is really important, from the bottom of your deck, alright? So, as you play a unit, you toss, and then you, I love this animation, by the way. You spawn a little tree sapling, which is a 1-mana 2/1 with ephemeral and challenger. Really useful unit, as you can just use it to get really good value. The fact that it has this challenger is really important, and makes it the ephemeral aspect not as relevant, even though it is still a very important thing, because when you spawn a sapling on your opponent's turn, or attack turn, then your opponent can just choose to ignore it, and then the ephemeral will die at the end of the turn, right? But it is a very, very neat effect from Maokai here to make it so they can make up for the lack of initial value that he provides, as he is very underwhelming as a 4-drop stat-wise, right? So he's making up for that with this ongoing effect. But the very, very interesting thing about Maokai is his level up. Both requirement and his ability when he's leveled up, right? So, this is a long process. Because
I am the forest.
Because Mordecai, as you can see here, when your units have died or your cards have been tossed 25 times this game. This is crazy. This is a big number. 25 is a lot. I mean, I assume this card has gone through extensive internal testing, and they've realized that this is the right number for it, because holy crap. But you can expect, you're going to see why it's such a, yeah, you can see why it's such an expensive effect. Look at this. When I level up, obliterate the enemy deck, leaving 4 non-champions. 4 non-champions in his deck. So that means that they can't draw champions, so you can obliterate them as well. And you leave them with 4 cards left in the deck, which means they are on the clock. This champion on its own is a win condition, ladies and gentlemen. It is the same as Ezreal. It's very, very similar to the way how Ezreal works. Ezreal builds the level up, and that is in itself the win condition. Leveling up Ezreal so you can one-shot your opponent after chaining a bunch of spells and dealing damage to their nexus directly, as you have played the reactive game the entire game, and then you just combo off with that champion. Even though a lot of people don't like Ezreal, I do believe that most people who complain about him, at least to a big extent, is because honestly they're not really as experienced in the game. And I don't mean this as an insult or anything like that. What I mean by this is that I believe cards like Ezreal are very important for the game. It's important for you to have win conditions and strategies that work out differently from the norm. Not every deck has to be, like, people who get mad because not every deck is, play your units on curve and beat your opponent's health down to 0. People who complain about that honestly don't know what's best for the game, and they just don't know what they're talking about, because it's important for a game to not feel linear, to have several different ways to win. That's why cards like Ezreal, and that's why the Puff Cap strategy are really, really neat additions to Legends of Runeterra provide you with different ways to play the game itself and different ways to win, right? So these sorts of alternative win conditions are very, very, very important for the overall experience and for the sake of gameplay diversity as well. So a champion like Maokai fits that category, and I welcome this. I love alternate win conditions. I love being able to win the game in other ways besides just beating my opponent's Nexus to death with the board presence, right? And that's what Maokai does here. He has a very interesting effect and could be a legit, really good champion against control decks. Not sure if Karma Ezreal falls into that, because Karma Ezreal is not really a control deck. It's more of a combo deck. It's playing reactively, but then it's going crazy on you. But other control decks that are generally slower, like Karina Control, could really struggle with this champion if you design a proper deck list around them. My biggest question is, how hard is it to level up Maokai? Because from my initial impressions, it seems like a very difficult task to achieve. It's very hard to get 25. Fortunately, it's combining the units dying and the tossing, because it's funny because they show this ability, but then you just kill off your opponent with an attack anyways, which kind of like defeats the whole purpose. So in this particular video, Maokai doesn't really do anything. It's just killing your opponent with a basic attack, but that's not really how you're going to be aiming to be winning with Maokai, right? Like, you're going to be aiming to be like leaving your opponent without cards and then have them deck out and you win the game. Because in case you don't know, that's what happens. You just automatically lose when you can't draw cards. So yeah, it's the same as in Magic the Gathering, which makes Maokai a win condition of his own, and you're winning by milling your opponent out. There are several issues with this, though. Let's take a look at the Twitter here, and let's take a look at the cards more, you know. I don't know what word I was going to use there, but yeah, let's actually have an in-depth look at the cards themselves. Maokai, we've been talking about all this time. Here is the sapling that he generates that we mentioned earlier, and here is his signature card, which is Sap Magic. It's important to look into the toss cards, the toss mechanic in general. What cards provide you with that ability, and are they good? And realistically speaking, how many cards do you have to toss? Because I think in order to make this work, you may have to do like more than half of the cards. Like, you may have to focus more on the units dying, like on having a bunch of units just die, being able to like maybe spawn a bunch of ephemeral units and have them dying again, and figure out a deck that has a lot of last breath effects and a lot of ways to, you know, flood the board in that sense and chump block the opponent so that you can rack up these deaths and thus enable the Maokai level up like that. Because if you focus too much on tossing your own cards, you can't toss 25 cards from your deck, because you are legit going to mill yourself. Like, this is the problem, right? You're gonna mill yourself before you get to mill your opponent. So finding the right balance between this is what's gonna make deck building around Maokai really compelling, right? So let's take a look at the toss cards. We mentioned the Sap Magic, which is a signature spell, a 3-mana burst spell, which tosses 3 and heals allies by 3 as well. This seems very underwhelming, not gonna lie. Your opponent can play around this really well by, you know, being very mindful about what trades they're going for. Unless you're applying really good pressure with this deck early on, your opponent is going to have more control over the combat scenarios than you are, which is going to lead to them being able to take value away from this card potentially, as it can be a really powerful effect, healing allies by 3, but that means you have to have multiple allies damaged, and that means your opponent has not been able to one-shot a lot of your creatures, which is easier said than done, right? So I'm not the biggest fan of Sap Magic, because I feel like this card, I feel like 3 mana is a lot for what this is doing. If you compare it to Health Potion, which, yeah, Health Potion is limited to 1 creature, but it can also heal your face, and it's 1 mana. Like, it's 1 mana, and the difference between 1 mana and 3 mana is huge. So I think this card, my general first impression is that it's pretty bad, honestly. I could be very wrong, though. Like, I'm completely open to being wrong about this, because that very well could be the case. It's hard to say without actually testing these cards out, but that's my first impression, right? Thorny Toad, aka Horny Toad. I mean, look at that face. I'm not even gonna dwell too much on that, but yeah. Thorny Toad here is a 2-mana 1/4 with Last Breath effect of tossing 2 and heal your Nexus 2. This is a pretty decent 2-drop. Honestly, it's got decent stats, you know, like Boom Kuruki or the infamous Vanguard Lookout. It's got a Last Breath, which, you know, it's going to be hard to kill this thing because it has 4 health, so it's going to be sticking around for a while. I can't really block into fearsome units, but it does heal you by 2, which allows you to buy time, and it contributes to the tossing synergy, which is really neat. So this is definitely going to be a staple for any sort of Maokai deck, as it is the best one out of the ones that I've seen, because we have, well, we'll talk about this afterwards. We're going to talk about this one first, the Dead Bloom Wanderer, a 3-mana 3/2 with Lifesteal. I think this one is very underwhelming. I think this card is very bad, personally, because it has 1 more attack than the Emerald Awakener, and the reason why people play the Emerald Rejuvenator, the reason why they play that card is because of the Enlightened effect, right? Because early on in the match, the 3-mana 2/2 with Lifesteal doesn't really get you much. This is 1 more attack with Lifesteal, is a bit more value than just having 1 more stat, because that stat is contributing to the Lifesteal effect. So it's a neat, it's actually not a bad unit, because it's trading you, like, it trades into fearsome units and trades into anything with 3 health evenly, and it tosses 3, and it has Lifesteal, so it's actually really decent against aggro decks, and it helps you stay alive, right? But I'm still not the biggest fan. I mean, for what it's doing, it's definitely a card that you need, because Maokai, in case you haven't noticed, is a slow champion. It's a slow strategy. It's a very slow deck, so you need to buy time. You need to be able to heal your health, so it's important, right? But I still feel like the 2 health is definitely going to hold this thing back, and it's not, you know, you're still paying 3 mana for it. It's not incredible, but it's decent enough, I guess. And then you got the Overgrown Snapvine, which is a 7-mana 4/3. When you summon a follower, kill it to summon an Overgrown Snapvine. So this guy, basically, once you play it, you don't really have to worry about your opponent removing it, because as long as you play this with a Maokai on the board, the sapling that you're spawning will convert to a Snapvine. So from that point onwards, every time you play a unit, you will get a 4/3, right? Instead of a 2/1. And thus, you'll be able to flood the board quite effectively. I really, really like the design of this card. It seems expensive. Like, initially, you're paying 7 mana for a 4/3, which is beyond understated. But it has an effect. Like, the fact that whatever is converting, like, the fact that you're converting something into himself means that creature that you converted into him is inheriting the same ability, right? So it's kind of like a virus in a way. Like, it spreads, and it's very hard to just contain if you're targeting the individual or the original source, right? Because every other, you know, multiplication of it, English, has the same traits. So once it gets going, it gets going. But again, 7 mana is quite a bit. I love this concept, though. I really, really like this card, and I really hope that it actually puts in the work. I think, unfortunately, one of the main things this sort of archetype will struggle with is, drumroll, elusives. You know, oh my god, elusives just countering an entire archetype just because of the elusive keyword. Who would have thought, right? That's one of the few things that are really just going to shut down this strategy completely. I really would like to see how this plays out against decks like Bannerman, Demacia, aggro decks, and of course against control decks. I see potential. I definitely see potential, and I think this archetype is fascinating, and I cannot wait to try it out. I'm like really excited for this. But from an initial, like, first impression, if you want to, like, from, like, basically power level, right? If you want to get my opinion regarding the power level of this card, I don't think it's quite up there. I think it's very slow, and I think the overall archetype is quite limited in that sense because of speed and potentially because of interaction. Again, that matchups like elusives. Man, elusives is just a really, really dumb deck, isn't it? Like, it just kind of like doesn't care about anything, and I don't know. It's so toxic because this is a really interesting strategy. And I think out of the ones that we see up until now, this is the archetype that I'm like more excited to play. but at the same time, perhaps the one that I expect the least from. It looks fun as fuck. It looks so fun, but it does not seem that strong. We will see though. I just don't like this card. I don't like Sap Magic. I just don't like it. And the fact that it's a signature card is a big deal. I think it's very weak. But the rest of the cards seem decent. The 2-drop is great. This card is just awesome. I just love the flavor of it. And the Dead Bloom Wanderer as well. The thing is, like, it's whenever you summon a follower. So from that point onwards, every follower that you summon becomes a 4-3. What if you have a better follower than a 4-3? You know, it's not like the stat line is that great to begin with, right? So, and, you know, your board does have a limit, right? So we'll have to see just how good it seems. But that's my initial impressions regarding Maokai and the Toss archetype. Very, very excited to try it out. We'll see, you know, just how good it can work. It could potentially be like a really solid anti-control archetype because any sort of slower strategy we can benefit from. And from, you know, from these initial units that we're seeing, we can take on, it seems like it can take on mid-range decks as well. Like this 2-drop and this 3-drop are decent enough, I think. But we'll have to see because Maokai, 4-mana, 1/4. Also, like, even though it's got 4 health, it's still vulnerable to like challengers and a bunch of things, and it can be difficult to keep alive. So it's an engine, but it's a very, very frail one, or at least a low impact one is that. So we'll have to wait and see. But that's basically it. I'm gonna be, you know, rambling from this point onward. So I think it's a good point to end the video. Those are my first impressions. Awesome, fun mechanic, but generally seems a little bit weak, at least as of now. We'll see what other cards we get. What do you guys think? Are there any cool combos that you have been thinking of? This is very, you know, it's not a like actual real-time reaction. Like I have seen the video like 10 minutes ago, but it is still a first impressions. Like I haven't actually sat down and thought about all sorts of potential combos and synergies within the core set that I will be looking into, like what regions to mix this with and all that stuff. Like that's something I got to think about, you know, and take my time on that. But nonetheless, it looks really dope. Honestly, not what I was expecting at all, and can't wait to try it out. So let me know what you guys think. Have a solid day. Thank you for watching. There's another video going up today as well. Double uploads, as I got some actual, you know, gameplay content with a new deck as the tournament series is over. So hopefully you guys are looking forward to that. And yeah, love ya. Have a solid day. Thank you for watching. I'll see you around.